The mansion was eerily silent. Elise Harrington used to revel in the way the Chicago skyline sparkled through the towering windows of her mother's sprawling estate. Now the city lights bled into hazy streaks of silver as she gazed, unseeing, from her wheelchair. 3 months had passed since the accident, and the world had left her behind. Her fingers brushed the armrest, trembling slightly. The doctors called her survival a miracle, given the severity of her injuries. But what was survival worth when everything that defined her life had crumbled? The promise ring was the first to go. "Elise, I'm sorry. I can't do this," Ethan muttered, his voice barely audible as he stood by her hospital bed. "I thought I could handle it." She had scoffed, a brittle, empty sound. Of course, he'd leave. The Elise he adored was the one in tailored gowns, dazzling clients at charity balls, moving effortlessly through life. Not this fractured version, tethered to a body that betrayed her. Her friends followed suit, their visits dwindling to texts, then silence. Too busy, too uneasy, too unwilling to face her new reality. And her mother, Victoria Harrington, the renowned real estate tycoon, drowned herself in deals and boardrooms. She funded top surgeons, cutting-edge therapies, and home adaptations, but she could barely meet Elise's gaze. Then came Liam Carter, a single father scraping by in a rundown apartment across town. He wasn't supposed to be part of her story. A delivery driver for a local grocery, Liam had arrived at the mansion one rainy afternoon, balancing bags and a toddler on his hip. His daughter Mia, all of 4 years old, had stared at Elise with wide, curious eyes, unfazed by the wheelchair. "Why do you sit like that?" she'd asked, innocent and direct. Elise froze, and used to such bluntness. Liam had apologized, flustered, but Elise waved it off. Something about Mia's unfiltered warmth cracked the ice around her heart. Liam started delivering more often, always with Mia in tow when daycare wasn't an option. He didn't pry or pity, just offered small talk about the weather or Mia's latest obsession with drawing stars. One day, when Elise's home nurse called in sick, Liam noticed her struggling to reach a glass on a high shelf. Without a word, he set it within her reach, then lingered to fix a flickering light in her kitchen. "You don't have to," Elise had said, her voice sharp from disuse. "I know," he replied simply, "but I want to." Weeks turned into months. Liam's visits became a quiet routine, groceries, small repairs, Mia's chatter filling the sterile mansion with life. Elise found herself laughing again, first at Mia's clumsy drawings, then at Liam's dry humor. He told her about his own struggles, losing his wife to illness, juggling 2 jobs, and fighting to keep Mia fed and happy. His world was chaos, yet he showed up for Elise when no one else did. One evening, as snow blanketed Chicago, Elise asked Liam to stay for coffee. They talked for hours, about dreams they'd buried, fears they'd never voiced. Liam admitted he'd once wanted to be an architect, but life had other plans. Elise confessed she missed painting, something she hadn't touched since the accident. The next day, Liam brought a small easel and paints, setting them up by her window. "Try it," he urged, ignoring her protests. Her first strokes were clumsy, but his encouragement was relentless. "You're still you, Elise. Wheels or no wheels." Their bond grew, not out of pity, but from shared resilience. Liam helped Elise navigate her new reality, teaching her to see strength in her survival. In return, Elise used her connections to get Liam into a community college architecture program, quietly funding Mia's daycare. They became each other's anchor, rebuilding their lives piece by piece. The mansion was no longer silent. It hummed with laughter, paint smudges, and the promise of new beginnings. The city lights still glittered, but now Elise saw them differently, not as a reminder of what she'd lost, but as a canvas for what she could still create, with Liam and Mia by her side. The quiet of the mansion was broken by a sharp rap at the door. Elise Harrington didn't turn her head. "Come in," she called, her voice flat. The housekeeper, Clara, stepped inside, twisting her apron in her hands. "Miss Harrington, your new caregiver's here." "I don't need a keeper," Elise muttered, staring at the Chicago skyline through the vast windows. Clara shifted uncomfortably. "Your mother insisted." "I know what she said." Elise's tone was sharp, cutting. "Fine. Let him in." The door opened again, and steady footsteps crossed the polished floor, not heavy but grounded. A man's voice, low and weathered but oddly soothing, broke the silence. "Elise Harrington." She turned her wheelchair slightly. He wasn't what she'd pictured. Not overly tall, but solid, with the lean strength of someone who worked with their hands. His dark hair was slightly tousled, like he'd been caught in the wind. His eyes, piercing yet warm, held no trace of the pity she'd come to despise. Noah Bennett, he said, offering a nod. I'm here to help, Elise. Help with what, exactly? She snapped. He didn't blink. Whatever you need. Maneuvering the chair, getting around, or just dealing. A faint quirk of his lips, humor maybe or defiance, flickered and vanished. I don't need anyone, she said, her voice colder than she meant. Noah shrugged, unfazed. Then I'll just be here when you do. The silence stretched, taut and heavy. Then a small voice chirped from behind him. Daddy, is this our new house? Elise's eyes widened. A girl, no older than 6, peered out from behind Noah's legs. She had his dark hair, tied in a messy ponytail, and bright, curious eyes that scanned the mansion's grand foyer with awe. Noah's hand settled gently on her shoulder. Just for work, Ava, he said softly. We're not staying. Elise's jaw tightened. You brought your daughter? Noah's gaze met hers, steady and unapologetic. No one else to watch her today. Clara had mentioned he was a single father, but Elise hadn't expected a child in her sterile, silent world. She opened her mouth to argue. This was her space, her cage, but Ava stepped forward, clutching a folded piece of paper. I drew this for you, she said, her voice small but earnest. Elise hesitated, then took the paper. It was a crayon sketch of a girl in a wheelchair, a lopsided sun beaming above her. Something caught in Elise's throat, unfamiliar and raw. Noah cleared his throat. Ava, go with Clara for a bit, okay? I'll find you soon. Ava nodded, her ponytail bouncing as she followed the housekeeper out, leaving Elise and Noah alone in the cavernous room. You're not a nurse, Elise said, her tone flat. Ex-paramedic, Noah replied, crossing his arms. I've got the skills. Your mother hired me because I'm stubborn enough to stick around, even when you push back. Elise let out a sharp laugh. She warned you I'd be trouble? Noah's eyes softened, just a fraction. She said you're worth it, and I needed the job. Ava's school fees don't pay themselves. Elise studied him. There was a hardness in his voice, not anger, but something deeper, grief maybe, or exhaustion. She sighed, turning her gaze back to the window. Fine, she said, but don't expect me to make this easy. Noah nodded, a faint smile tugging at his lips. Wouldn't dream of it. The door closed behind Noah, and the mansion fell silent once more. Elise's hands trembled as she gripped the armrests of her wheelchair. That should have been the end of their interaction, a clean break, a return to her solitude. But that night, she jolted awake, her breath ragged, the nightmare's grip unrelenting. The screech of metal, the weight of the wreckage, the suffocating dark, it clawed at her. She gasped, fingers twisting in the silk sheets. The door flew open, and Noah was there, his presence steady in the dim light. Breathe, Elise, he said, his hands firm but gentle on her shoulders. In. Hold it. Out. She wanted to push him away, to scream at him to leave, but the panic held her hostage. His voice anchored her, pulling her back. In. Out. Slowly, her chest loosened, the air returning. When she could finally speak, her words came out jagged. Get out. Noah didn't budge. You okay? I said get out. He watched her for a beat, his eyes searching, then stood to leave. As he turned, his sleeve shifted, revealing a jagged scar snaking across his forearm. Elise's brow furrowed. Noah quickly pulled the sleeve down and left without a word. The silence returned, but for the first time since the accident, something stirred in Elise. Not just anger, but a spark of intrigue. Who was this man? What had he been through? Morning light filtered through the mansion's tall windows, casting soft patterns across the hardwood floors. Elise hadn't slept. The nightmare lingered, and the image of Noah's scar burned in her mind, a question she couldn't shake. She wheeled into the kitchen, where Clara was arranging a breakfast tray. Noah sat at the island, sipping coffee, while Ava chattered about a butterfly she'd seen in the garden. The girl's boundless energy was almost overwhelming, a stark contrast to Elise's hollow ache. Morning, Noah said, his voice rough, like he hadn't slept either. Elise ignored him, reaching for the teapot. Her hand shook slightly, leftover adrenaline, or maybe just exhaustion. Ava turned to her, all smiles. Do you like waffles, Miss Harrington? Elise paused, caught off guard by the girl's brightness. I don't eat sugar, she said curtly. Ava's face fell. Oh. Noah glanced at Elise, his expression unreadable, but he didn't intervene. Clara broke the tension. Mrs. Harrington called. She's stopping by this afternoon. Elise's grip on her mug tightened. How kind of her to pencil me in. Noah's eyes flicked to her, studying her again in that way she hated, like he could see through her walls. The day crawled by. Elise buried herself in her laptop, scrolling through articles about Harrington Properties. The company thrived without her, announcing new developments and partnerships. Life hadn't paused for her pain. She barely noticed Ava settling nearby on the rug, sketchbook open. "What are you drawing?" Elise asked, her tone flat. Ava held up a colorful scribble of a bird with oversized wings. "Wanna see?" Elise hesitated. The girl's openness was unnerving, like a light she wasn't ready for. "It's fine." Ava grinned. "Daddy says I draw too many feathers. But I like them." A faint smile tugged at Elise's lips despite herself. "Feathers weigh too much. It'd never fly." "Elise." Noah's voice cut through the room. He stood in the doorway, phone in hand, his face taut. "Your mother's here." Elise's stomach twisted. Victoria Harrington swept in moments later, her designer coat flawless, her smile practiced. "Elise, darling." "Mother," Elise replied, her voice cold. Victoria's eyes flicked to Noah, then Ava, who was still coloring. "I see you've met your new aide." "Best friends already," Elise said, her sarcasm biting. Noah exhaled softly but stayed quiet. Victoria adjusted her scarf. "I have news. I'm stepping back from the company. The board's finalizing my transition." Elise froze. "What?" "It's time," Victoria said smoothly. "And given your condition, we've appointed Laura Kessler as interim CEO." Laura, her mother's ruthless deputy, all ambition and sharp edges. Elise's nails bit into her palms. "You're handing her my stake." "Temporarily," Victoria said, her tone too polished. "Until you're ready to return." The unspoken truth hung heavy. "Until you're whole again." Noah shifted, his jaw tight, but he said nothing. Elise's voice was steel. "Get out." Victoria blinked. "Elise, please." "Out." For a moment, the room was still. Then Victoria sighed, as if Elise were a petulant child. "We'll discuss this when you're reasonable." The click of her heels faded as she left. The silence returned, heavier than before. Elise stared at the floor, her hands shaking. Noah watched her, not with pity, but with something else, understanding maybe. Ava's small voice broke the tension. "Miss Harrington, want to draw with me?" Elise didn't answer, but the question lingered, soft and persistent, like a crack in her carefully built walls. Elise's head snapped up, her eyes blazing. Noah stood in the doorway, arms crossed, his face shadowed with something unreadable. "You don't get to weigh in," she snapped. "Maybe not," Noah said, stepping closer, his voice steady. "But you're letting her decide who you are now." Elise's laugh was sharp, like broken glass. "You don't know the first thing about me." "Then show me." His gaze didn't waver. "You want your life back? Fight for it." A small voice broke the tension. "What?" Ava stood in the corner, clutching her sketchbook, unnoticed until now. She held up her drawing, a girl in a wheelchair, now wielding a glowing wand under a starry sky. "Wizards don't quit, even when it's scary." Elise's breath caught, a pang slicing through her defenses. Noah's voice softened. "She's not wrong." For the first time in months, a flicker of defiance stirred in Elise, buried deep beneath the weight of her anger. Maybe she wasn't finished yet. That night, Elise tore through her mother's files. If Victoria was handing her legacy to Laura Kessler, Elise would uncover the reason. Her laptop cast a cold glow in the darkened study as she sifted through financial records. Something wasn't right, discrepancies hidden in obscure accounts, transfers masked by shell companies. Her pulse quickened. Fraud. A floorboard creaked. Elise spun her wheelchair. Noah stood in the doorway, his silhouette sharp against the hallway light. "You should be resting," he said, his tone low. She slammed the laptop shut. "Mind your own business." Noah stepped inside, closing the door softly. "You're digging into Harrington Properties." It wasn't a question. Elise lifted her chin, defiant. He rubbed the back of his neck, the scar on his forearm catching the dim light. "Find anything?" She hesitated. Trust didn't come easily, but Noah hadn't flinched during her nightmare, hadn't walked away. Against her instincts, she opened the laptop. "Look." Noah leaned in, his shoulder brushing hers as he scanned the screen. "Damn," he muttered. "Laura's siphoning funds." "And my mother's letting her," Elise said, her voice tight. Noah was quiet, then met her eyes. "So, what's your move?" Elise's gaze burned with a fire she hadn't felt in months. "I'm going to take them down." A slow, approving grin spread across Noah's face. "That's more like it." Down the hall, Ava's soft hums echoed faintly through the mansion. The fight was on. Dawn crept over Chicago, the city's hum filtering through the mansion's windows, distant horns, the low pulse of morning traffic. Elise hadn't slept. The laptop screen glowed with evidence of Laura's theft, diverted funds from Harrington Properties development projects, buried in offshore accounts. Noah leaned against the wall, watching her with that quiet intensity. He'd stayed up too, pointing out a hidden transfer here, a shady subsidiary there, his paramedic's precision unexpectedly sharp for corporate sleuthing. "You're gonna crash before you take her down," he said, breaking the silence. Elise didn't look up. "I don't have time to stop." Noah sighed, pulling a chair beside her. "Then let me help." She paused. This wasn't his battle, but he'd stayed through her panic, through the long night of digging. "Fine," she said, sliding the laptop toward him. "These accounts, they're draining the company's green energy fund. I can't tie it directly to Laura without access to the internal servers." Noah studied the data, his brow furrowing. "You need an insider." "Exactly. And everyone at Harrington is loyal to my mother or Laura." Noah leaned back, his eyes narrowing. "Not everyone. I know a guy, old friend from my paramedic days. He's in IT at your company. Owes me a favor." Elise stared at him, the spark in her chest flaring brighter. For the first time, she didn't feel alone in the fight. A slow grin spread across Noah's face. "Not everyone." Elise's brow furrowed. "What?" He pulled a worn business card from his wallet. "Jasper Lee, IT Security, Harrington Properties. Old paramedic crewmate. He owes me." For the first time in weeks, a flicker of possibility sparked in Elise's chest. "You think he'd risk his job?" Noah's expression hardened. "He'll do it for me." There was a weight to his words, a story he wasn't sharing. Before Elise could press, Ava's voice floated in from the hallway, sleepy and soft. "Daddy, why are you up?" Noah's face softened instantly. "Helping Miss Harrington, kiddo." Back to bed. Ava shuffled into the doorway, rubbing her eyes, and peeked at the laptop. "Are you spies?" Elise let out a dry laugh. "Close enough." Ava's eyes widened. "Cool." Noah sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. "Not cool, Ava. And not a word to anyone, got it?" She mimed, zipping her lips. "Secret mission. I won't tell." She hesitated, then added, "Can I help?" Elise opened her mouth to say no, but Noah cut in. "You can help by keeping Clara company today. Miss Harrington and I have work to do." Ava pouted but nodded, padding back to her room. Elise watched her go, Noah's words lingering. "She's sharp," he said quietly. "Too sharp. She's been through enough." There was that shadow again, a glimpse of something heavy in his tone. Elise wanted to ask, but Noah was already pulling out his phone. "I'll call Jasper," he said. "But files alone won't bury Laura. We need leverage." Elise's eyes gleamed. "I'm ready to play dirty." Jasper Lee was a lanky man with quick eyes and a fidgety energy. He met them at a coffee shop a few blocks from Harrington Properties' sleek Chicago office, his fingers tapping a nervous rhythm on the table. "This is nuts, Bennett," he muttered, glancing around. "If I get caught—" "You won't," Noah said, sliding a folder across the table. "Just get me into the system. 5 minutes." Jasper sighed, producing a USB drive from his jacket. "Server access, security codes. It's all here. But if this blows back on me—" "It won't," Noah cut in, his tone final. Elise watched the exchange, intrigued. This Noah, calculated, commanding, was new. The paramedic turned strategist. Jasper left in a hurry, mumbling about a meeting. Noah pocketed the drive. "Now we wait." Elise stirred her tea, the gravity of their plan settling in. "Why are you doing this?" Noah didn't answer right away. When he did, his voice was low. "Because no one should lose everything and have no one in their corner." It wasn't the full story, she could sense it, but it was enough for now. Back at the mansion, the air felt electric, like the calm before a storm. Noah set up his laptop at the dining table, his fingers moving deftly as he navigated firewalls and encrypted folders. Elise leaned over his shoulder, her pulse racing as Harrington Properties' internal records flooded the screen. "There," she said, pointing. "That's the eco-development fund Laura's draining." Noah clicked through. "She's funneling millions into dummy accounts, selling off land rights bit by bit." Elise's grip tightened on the table's edge. "This is it. Proof." Noah's phone buzzed before he could respond. He glanced at the screen, and his entire frame went still. Elise frowned. "What's wrong?" He stood abruptly, the chair scraping. "Ava's school. She fainted at recess." Elise's heart sank. Noah was already grabbing his coat, his movements frantic. "I have to go." "Wait." Elise reached for him. "I'm coming with you." He shook his head. "You need to lock down those files. Laura can't know we've got this." His voice broke, raw with fear. "Please, Elise." She'd never seen him like this, pleading, vulnerable. "Go," she said softly. "I've got this." He was gone in seconds. Alone, Elise stared at the laptop, her fingers hovering. The evidence was right there, but her mind was on Ava, her bright laugh, her secret mission grin, the girl who drew wizards with too many stars. Elise took a breath and started encrypting the files. The fight with Laura could wait. Ava came first. The hospital waiting room reeked of disinfectant and despair. Elise shouldn't have come. Noah had told her to stay, to protect the files. But the moment Clara arrived to watch the mansion, Elise had called her driver. Now her wheelchair sat in the corner of the sterile room as she watched Noah pace, his boots scuffing the floor with every tense step. "Any news?" she asked. Noah raked a hand through his hair. "Nothing yet. She just collapsed. They're doing tests." His voice was raw, fraying at the edges. This wasn't the steady Noah who'd cracked corporate servers. This was a father breaking apart. A nurse approached, holding a tablet. "Mr. Bennett, we need to go over Ava's medical history." Noah's jaw clenched. "I'll be back." Elise nodded, watching him vanish down the hall. Alone, she pulled out her phone, checking the encrypted backup. Still secure. Her thumb lingered over her mother's contact, but she locked the screen instead. When Noah returned, his face was pale, his eyes hollow. Elise wheeled closer. "What is it?" He slumped into a chair, hands limp between his knees. "Her heart," he said, barely audible. "They found a defect when she was a baby. Too small to fix then. They thought she'd outgrow it." The words hit Elise like a punch. She didn't know what to say, but the silence felt wrong. "She's strong, Noah. Like her dad." He didn't respond, just stared at the floor, lost in his fear. Elise stayed, the files forgotten for now. The fight wasn't over, but Ava's heartbeat was the only thing that mattered. Elise stared at Noah, who looked like a man on the edge of breaking. The calm strategist who'd hacked into corporate servers was gone, replaced by a father drowning in fear. "What do they need?" she asked, her voice low. "Specialized surgery soon," Noah said, his laugh brittle and hollow. "Insurance won't touch it. Been fighting them for months." Elise didn't flinch. "I'll cover it." Noah's head jerked up, his eyes flashing. "No, I don't need your charity." "It's not charity," Elise said, her voice slicing through the hospital's sterile hum. "Ava's a kid. And you," she paused, steadying herself. "You're all she's got." The truth hung heavy between them. Noah's jaw tightened, but he held her gaze. "I can't be in your debt, Elise." "You're not," she said firmly. "Let me do this. For her." For a moment, Noah just looked at her, not as the broken heiress, not as the woman in the wheelchair, but as someone who'd chosen to fight alongside him. His throat bobbed. "Okay." An hour later, a top pediatric cardiologist, one of Elise's mother's connections, called in as a favor, arrived to review Ava's charts. Noah stood by the window, rigid, staring out at Chicago's skyline as it flickered to life in the dusk. Elise wheeled up beside him. "She's going to be okay." "You don't know that," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "No," she admitted. "But I believe it." He glanced at her. "Why?" "Because the world can't be cruel enough to take her light away." Noah's eyes softened, searching hers. "You've changed." Elise huffed a laugh. "Still a pain in the ass." "Yeah," he said, a faint smile breaking through. "But you're our pain in the ass now." Her unexpected laugh echoed in the quiet, startling them both. Then her phone vibrated, an alert flashing across the screen, motion detected. "Study." Her stomach dropped. "Someone's in the mansion." Noah was already grabbing his coat. "Laura," he said, voice grim. "The files are safe, though. She doesn't know that." Elise glanced toward Ava's room, hesitating. Noah followed her gaze. "Go," he said. "I'll stay." "No," she said, resolute. "We do this together." The mansion was too still when they arrived. Elise wheeled through the front door, Noah close behind, his movements taut with tension. Everything seemed untouched until they reached the study. Her laptop was gone. Noah muttered a curse. They took the decoy. Elise let out a breath. The laptop had been a trap, loaded with fake data. The real evidence was encrypted and hidden. Then she spotted it, a note on the desk, pinned under a glass paperweight. "You should have stayed out of this, Elise." No signature, but the message was clear. Noah picked it up, his face darkening. "Laura's not just stealing anymore. She's coming for you." Elise's hands gripped her armrests. She started a war. A creak from the hallway made them both freeze. Clara stood there, eyes wide. "Miss Harrington, I didn't know you were back."